Hey everybody, what is going on? Welcome back to another episode of the Q&A series here at the Shed Organics. All right, guys, my name is Jordan and welcome to another episode. Today we have a few more questions which I'm very keen to dive into and share some answers with you. These are ones that I commonly have struggled with as well, and possibly you will find some valuable information in as well. So let's jump into the very first question. My indoor plants are always getting those tiny flying bugs that are in the soil. What are they and how do I get rid of them? Now, those annoying little bugs are fungus gnats, and often you'll find them in decaying matter. Uh, Often it can be if, say, for example, like in your sink, when you're washing out in the kitchen and stuff, and there's like bits of food scraps and things, or in the drain, like they're kind of like drain flies or things similar to this, where they feed on the breaking down matter or organic matter that's in the top layer of the soil. So if you've got lots of, leaves that are falling off your plants and they're in there on the top layer, they're actually doing the job of breaking those down. But on the indoor plants, they can become quite annoying and can fly around and, just be everywhere, and they're quite a pest. So there's a few methods that you can use in order to reduce their numbers, or before they start completely taking over, you can do something about it. Now, there's traps, so you can get yellow sticky traps and things like this, which often work for the gnats, and they just, fly and stick to the trap. But that can often become a little unsightly, especially if you've got all these yellow sticky traps with squash bugs all over them. It can not be all that great for indoors around your houseplants. One method, obviously, is to, reduce the amount of top layer of soil or breaking down matter on the top so they don't necessarily have anything to feed off. Um, but my suggestion goes straight into something like diatomaceous earth. Now, diatomaceous earth is relatively cheap. It's food grade. You can buy it at a lot of stores, and it's really helpful just to sprinkle a bit over the top of your soil layer, and it essentially dehydrates them and can dry them out and dries out that top layer as well, so that the mulch layer isn't all fungal and having the perfect breeding ground for these fungus gnats. So a few methods to try there. I have also seen some sort of DIY traps where you can use like honey and apple cider vinegar or a little bit of dish soap and things like that. But in my experience, I haven't had a huge amount of success with those, and they can just tend to like just sit there for a long time and also become smelly and unsightly. So my top tip for that one is diatomaceous earth, a really good one to help dry out that mulch layer and prevent some of those fungus gnats. All right, question two. I've heard coffee grounds are good for the garden, but are there plants that actually do not like them? Now, yes, coffee grounds are really good for the garden, and in a world where so many people love coffee and there are so many coffee grounds being used daily, it's really a good idea to try and figure out a way of reusing some of those coffee grounds. Now, personally, I would put them through the compost, use them as a compost material, or add them through the worm bin. That's always really good. But you need to remember that coffee grounds are highly acidic, and they are also high in nitrogen. So you need to take that into consideration when you're adding it to some plants. So certain plants that really don't like high levels of nitrogen, especially things like tomatoes, lavender, things like this, rosemary, they prefer a more alkaline sort of soil, so the acidity that the coffee grounds bring isn't so good. You need the nitrogen for the tomatoes, but the acidity itself isn't good for, say, like an alkaline based soil that you might need. So be really careful about which ones you use coffee grounds for, and my best advice, again, is to just run it through the compost or the worm bin as a high nitrogen ingredient, and then you're going to get some real good benefits on the other end once you've got that nice compost that comes out the other end. Question three. Now, this one's about watermelons. I've tried growing watermelon, but the fruits seem to stop getting bigger and never ripened. What could be causing that? Um, like a lot of things that are on the vine and produce flowers to then a fruit. So something like a pumpkin or a zucchini or, a watermelon or something like this. They often aren't pollinated correctly. So you'll have a male and a female flower, and all the pollinators are due to come around and pollinate those flowers and cross-pollinate the two and turn them into fruits. So incorrect pollination, depending on what particular thing you're trying to grow. In this case, watermelons will make sure that it doesn't develop into the full-size fruit that we're after. So there's a few ways you can go around and hand pollinate yourself and make sure that you get proper pollination, or you can just, attract lots of beneficial insects that are going to help do the pollination for you. Another thing that you might be sort of facing with these watermelons is that it's not enough sun. Watermelons do like lots of sun, from my experience. Maybe not too hot sun, but lots of nice, decent temperatures during the day. And then also making sure you're getting the watering right because it is a watermelon, it's full of water. If you don't get adequate amount of water, then that's not going to transfer into the fruit. And vice versa, if you're pumping too much water into it, you might cause cracking and things like this when it's trying to take up too much of that water. So it is a fine balance, but my best advice, have a look at the pollination first if the fruits aren't developing fully in size, and then go through things like sunlight and water and kind of go down the line of troubleshooting and see what you can come up with. All right, this one, I'm not going to pretend like I am a great carrot grower, but this one's important. Every time I try to grow carrots, they come out short and twisted. Guilty. How do I get those perfect long ones like in the store? Now, carrots generally, from my experience, you can, put them in the seedling trays and things like this to get them going. But because it's like a carrot is like a tap root, so it's like going right down. If it hits the bottom, it kind of thinks that that's run out of soil and it's going to kind of grow in that short variety. Well, it's going to end up nice and short and squat, and you wait all this time and you've got these nice big plumages above the carrots and you pull it up and it's only this big. That happens all the time. So carrots require this deep taproot to kind of send itself all the way down. And now what's really important is to have loose soil. If there's not loose, well-draining soil, then it's going to struggle to get that taproot down, and then it's not going to develop the nice big carrots that we have. So sand is good. Maybe not rocks because that could sort of hit something and kind of go, oh, that's the bottom. Sand is really good because it's nice and fine and it can kind of just push its way all the way through and get down into that. So nice and loose, and aerate the soil a fair bit before you start planting in those carrots. Another thing is maybe avoid fresh compost. That can cause it to do that like forking thing where you sort of see the carrot go down and split a little bit. Not entirely sure of the chemistry, but I think it's just the fact that hot, fresh compost is just really, triggering this carrot to kind of grow off in all different directions. So, yes, one for the carrot lovers out there, make sure it's nice, loose, draining soil, and you should get some nice, deep, full-size carrots ready to eat. Another one back on house plants now. I love house plants, but I always kill them by over or under watering. Is there an easy way to know when to water? As a big houseplant lover myself, I find it difficult depending on the type of houseplant. I've also found that, the topic of houseplants is really deep and big as you can imagine, but it really depends on the placing of your plant in the house. So some plants require really high humidity. So somewhere like the bathroom or the shower or something like that might give it that extra humidity so it's not drying out as quick. And vice versa, you can have some succulents that can really do well without much water and can do in a sort of like a sunroom or something like that, which get lots of bright filtered light and heat and don't dry out all that quickly. They can preserve that water. So in terms of knowing when to water, often you'll see it like something like a peace lily. The leaves will be drooping and you'll be able to see, okay, that desperately needs water, and then it will perk itself back up again. But you can also just do the good old test with your finger and just dunk your finger in a couple of centimeters in the soil. And if it comes out and it's dry, then you know it's probably time to give it some water. Overwatering is going to cause it to sit in water, especially if it's not draining freely out the bottom. and you have a risk of developing things like we were speaking earlier about, like fungus gnats. So with my houseplants, okay, the ones that require a lot of humidity and water, keeping in the bathroom, you can rinse them down with the shower or something like that every so often and give them a nice drenching because they're used to that and they can deal with the high humidity. But things like a peace lily or a monstera or something like this, what I often do is get a tray of water and sit the plant in that tray of water and allow it to suck up the water from the bottom and draw up the water and wick it up the soil, which then means that it can drink as much as it needs and then it doesn't need to take any more. So you avoid that risk of just dumping all the stuff through the top and completely overwatering it. Now, I don't leave it in there forever, but just at least leave it in there for a couple of hours, and then you can take it out and it should be nicely watered from the bottom. So hopefully that helps, and hopefully you can keep some more of your houseplants alive in the future. Next question is about my absolute favorite fruit in the world, blueberries. Now, my blueberry plant is growing well, but it barely produces any berries. What can I do to get some more fruit? So, if you didn't know already, blueberries prefer a very acidic soil, okay? You know, as I'm looking back at the last question about acidity, if you've got something like coffee grounds, then you can add that to your soil and it creates a more acidic environment. You can also use things like pine needles, which are very acidic. So you can use that on either in the soil or on top as a mulch. Provides a nice acidic soil base for blueberries. Now, again, with something like a blueberry, pollination is very important. So having another variety of blueberries nearby where we can have some cross-pollination helps to promote fruit. I have heard of, people that have just one singular blueberry plant and it does produce fruit, but that may be because your neighbor has one or something along those lines. But for the most part, as far as I know, blueberries require having a couple of different plants around so that they can have this bit of cross-pollination and help each other bear fruit. So grab a couple of different varieties, throw them in your garden, throw them near each other, and then you'll optimally, hopefully, get a nice crop of blueberries there. So yeah, I absolutely love blueberries. So that's something that I love to talk about. Um, Beautiful. Last question. I keep getting mushrooms popping up in my garden beds. Are they bad for my plants and should I remove them? No. Mushrooms are great. They're great for your soil. It indicates that you have some wicked mycelium growth or I guess, fungal growth in your soil. And that's an indication of healthy soil. Remember, we're not scared of living soil, having things living in there and fungus and bugs and worms and all of this. That's what we want to see, okay? Any population that's completely, taking over, like if you've got mycelium and mushrooms completely dwarfing your entire thing, then maybe you can look at trying to change that a little bit. But in my experience, mycelium is great. That's the network that's underneath the soil that's helping to transfer nutrients into the plant. It's talking to the plant and it's connecting all of the plant roots underneath, feeding off each other and transferring all the nutrients and making this whole cycle of nutrient uptake underneath the soil. So fungus is really, really good. So if you're seeing mushrooms in the garden, it means that you have some healthy soil. So that wraps up today's episode. A nice bunch of quick fire questions there for you for today's Q&A. So please, if you have any more, if you have something to add, throw them in the comments and I'll get to your question on the next episode. If you're seeing this on social media as well, please chuck some comments down below and or send me a DM if you want it in private and let's answer some more questions for you. If you enjoy the video or you think it can be helpful for someone, please share it around. And otherwise, I'll see you again very soon on the next video. Thanks for watching.